Rollback or GTFO, they said. Who cares about offline play, they said. Online multiplayer is the future of gaming, they said. Cheap AI, they said. Wait a minute. Wasn't there a fighting game that just came out not too long ago that was advertised to be a release of an older game and has rollback netcode? Shit. Let's see what it's like. It's gonna be one of those days, isn't it? Prepare your anuses. Things are gonna get tangent material. Rollback netcode. Boy. And to those who aren't really familiar with fighting games, I'll explain it in the best way possible without pulling up a page and reading it to you, because I assume most of these people who watch these videos know how to read. The modern day evolution of online netcode, where you are guaranteed the most smoothest of performance, whether you're in China, Japan, dirty knees, or look at these. I think you get the idea. Essentially, it's the thing that keeps fighting games prevalent online when people are actually playing them. Now, a lot of fighting games back then, especially when very early in the days of Xbox Live, PlayStation 2, or even the very few online fighting games on PC like Melty Blood, fighting game netcode wasn't exactly the greatest, and I'm not going to deny it. There were some games like King of Fighters 13, at least one such example, that is considered to be pretty loved, albeit having some of the worst netcode in existence. But even something like Street Fighter 4, a game that is so wonderfully loved, people didn't give a shit about the netcode. Whether it be Street Fighter 4, BlazBlue Calamity Trigger, or even something like Battle Fantasia, the quality of a fighting game has decent offline play for when you can't play with others, or you have someone to play with locally, so you can punch them in the face if they're being an asshole, or if you're able to find someone online. The netcode wasn't exactly the top priority, but it got the job done. As in, a lot of video games today that are just pushed out as is. There is a strange movement, and I don't quite know what game really started this nonsense, but there's been so much expectations of rollback that it's gotten insane. You've seen it before, rollback or GTFO, and it's only with fighting games for some reason, not like games like Call of Duty where a lot of people are always playing it, yet they not only can't even bother having something as basic as anti-cheat to assure that people, well, can't cheat, but then they complain if something like Dark Souls 2 had it, or even something like CSGO, which has it, but is still probably being plagued by hackers to this day. Lol. I've made rants and Twitter discussions about this before, but we finally got a perfect example of a fighting game that has no excuse for those who always strive, and no, that was not a pun, on rollback, based on an old-ass video game that probably no one has heard of because it was, well, roll the clip.
Revered, celebrated, and affluent only in Japan!
God, I love that show. And why the hell doesn't Strider like that shit? Rumblefish is a video game that's made by Dimps, who you may know as the developer of a lot of other fighting games or has helped in various fighting games, and yet someone somewhere thought it was a good idea to port the Rumblefish 2 on modern day systems, giving it the first ever localization for everyone to play. There's just a couple problems though that we're going to address. Rumblefish 2 came from a day when fighting games weren't complete shit and has been brought back into modern times. A relic, if you will. And the people developers who thought it was a good idea to charge highway robbery for what little content this game has to offer, and doubly so with the PC version not even letting you use keyboard support. Yeah, a fighting game that doesn't let you use a keyboard on PC. I think I owe From Software an apology right now. Were it been released maybe a couple years ago, it wouldn't get so much hate. Especially on Steam. Because we all know that Steam is a wonderful place to be to share your perfectly reasonable opinions. Yeah, right. I have actually tried Rumblefish 1, and I sampled, quote-unquote, a little bit of Rumblefish 2. And truth be told, Rumblefish 1, at least the PlayStation 2 port, I didn't necessarily go out of my way to wasting my life savings on a credit card to buy Rumblefish 1 on the PlayStation 2, in addition to buying the PlayStation 2 that works with NTSC, or more offensively, go to Japan, find an arcade board that actually had Rumblefish 1 working to play it authentically, and instead did what the smart person did. I decided to emulate it on PCSX2. Honestly, I've enjoyed playing it for what fun I've had with it. It's a very basic, structured fighting game from that time. You have a decent number of modes, and I even went out of my way to unlock the content that you earn in the Kumite mode, which is known as Survival. Go up against 100 opponents, and of course, if you lose, you start all the way from square one. And all you get is some shitty artwork. Amazing. But for Rumblefish 1, it's passable. It's got some replay value. You can earn the bosses relatively easy. They're not a pain in the ass to unlock, unlike Virtual Fighter. And it's a pretty solid fighting game with some honestly pretty good graphics and decent presentation. Now, I haven't played the original Rumblefish 2, as that, I believe, was released only in arcades, and with the wonderful world of PC Master Race, I figured why not sample the Rumblefish 2, as you're going to be seeing on screen. And the gameplay is mostly the same, but there's just too many problems with this. The UI is so terrible, it's not even funny. There's no keyboard support, which is an absolute fail. I gotta love how people who are so advocate on saying that you should only be playing first-person shooters with mouse and keyboard, yet you have a literal fighting game where you cannot use a keyboard at all. So, yeah, your arguments are fucking flawed there, buddy. Sorry. And Rumblefish 2, being as ridiculously bare bones as it is legitimately overpriced for what little it offers, especially in the offline department. And as I mentioned earlier, a fucking relic from Days of Future Past. It would not be so bad if it were released around the time of when, say, Guilty Gear XX, Action Core Plus R got its PC port, as it was pretty much unanimously shot on for essentially being a pretty shitty PC port with some of the worst online netcode of all time. Then people somehow changed their minds when the game got an update 5 years too late. And only on the PC version, by the way. People now all of a sudden thought the game was saved, even though the game was already good to begin with, and unlike Rumblefish 2, Guilty Gear XX, Action Core Plus R, is very reasonably priced. Whereas this game, a game that is lacking very basic PC features, and let alone features from other fighting games to begin with, this shit is legit highway robbery. The developers saw it was a good idea, rather than having the bosses be unlockable, you know, like every sane fighting game ever made, you have to pay $4 a piece for the characters that are in the game. Two of which are boss characters from the original game, and the third one, who has some of the most bizarre and quite frankly offensive win quotes ever conceived. Legit, the only way I would buy this is that if it was maybe at least under $10. Because being charged for $40 for a game like this, which I was legitimately looking forward to, by the way, but with the nonsense that came with the features for this game and having experienced it firsthand, is pretty bad. There's actually a Steam review that I'm going to be referencing because I feel that this is probably the best way I could explain it without having the audience to explain it because, you know, subscriber threshold opinion count and whatnot bullshit. I'll leave a link in the description if you want to read it. It's worth a read from someone who probably knows a lot more than I do. Thank you for your comments. Unfortunately, we have no plan to support keyboard in future. Great English. What the hell kind of developer would release a PC port of a fighting game and not incorporate keyboard controls at all? Look, I get that playing with keyboard isn't exactly the optimal way to play a fighting game, but people play shooters with controller, so I really don't want to fucking hear it right now. We wanted to stick to the original 5 buttons gameplay. You know there's a thing called rebinding, right? As for DLCs, as you certainly know, Greed, Beatrice, and Hazama were not available in default consideration of the Atomus wave, but had to be unlocked by Operator. We wanted to keep the same logic. Okay, so let me ask you something. Let's say Marvel decided Capcom to release Marvel vs. Capcom Origins on Steam, having Marvel vs. Capcom and Marvel Superheroes as is by Iron Galaxy Studios for $50. Now, going by your logic of characters were not available by Operator, would you want people to pay $5 a piece for the secret/unplayable characters? Those being Doctor Doom and Thanos for Marvel Superheroes, and even Anita of all characters, who was actually only in the Japanese version because Capcom was really fucking stupid with things like that even back in their glory days. And of course with something like Marvel vs. Capcom, you of course have Shady Color Swap, Shady Color Swap, Shadow Lady, Shady Color Swap, Shady Color Swap, and Roll. Do you honestly think people would be okay with this? No. A patch is in development including replay, recording, and spectator mode. Yeah, remember when reviewers gave vanilla MVC3 shit for not having a basic thing like spectator mode? Man, those are the good old days. We will keep working on it. Okay. Honestly, this is just ridiculous at this point. Considering that Rumblefish 2 actually has Rollback, which is a thing that was very much predominantly advertised, by the way, unlike a certain video game, it seems like people have seemed to be smarter than I thought, because it's not on a website that only talks about Street Fighter and shuns any other game, whether it has Rollback or not. Legit, there was a fighting game that was an early build, and it had Rollback, but people were criticizing it because the graphics were really shitty when the graphics that they did show was from an earlier build. This is almost as retarded as when people gave King of Fighters 14 shit for looking like a PS2 game. Don't judge the game until the final build, unless it's like close to release. And saying that a game looks like a PS2 game, you cannot say it is both an insult to the game or using it as a means to make the game look good. People legit need to stop flip-flopping on such nonsense. But what do I know? Rumblefish 2 is a very interesting case of people being hyped for a game that's being the sequel to the original Rumblefish and being playable across all the boards. Because, you know, everything has to be on everything, right? The online netcode for this game has netcode, but it's not even built correctly. Which is sad. You think Dimps would learn their lesson after with all their other games that had online play, including something like Xenoverse 2. But regardless, it's hard to say as to what will happen with the likes of Rumblefish 2. And what's even more sadder is that they're actually going to be releasing the original Rumblefish in a similar manner. Except this is where things get pretty shitty. There is a production company known as Limited Run Games. I'm not going to get into the recent controversy as it is recording, but what I can tell you is that there's going to be a collector's edition of the Rumblefish 2, which is going to have a download code for the original Rumblefish, assumingly built in the same manner as this game. How freaking scummy do you have to be to include a bonus game in a voucher code for a more expensive version of a game that's already bare bones as it is? This would be like if SNK would charge you money to play the original King of Fighters 2002 in their magnum opus, King of Fighters 2002 Unlimited Match. This type of reception with the Rumblefish 2 has been interesting since it promises online netcode, and yet the one time people actually wised up, it's just become too late at this point. People really need to start wising up about fighting games as of late, because while they may be becoming more accessible, they only seem to shive on being made for online play and the pro tournament players who only care about playing against other people. I'm gonna go take a DUI test, because I don't want to get pulled over for drunk driving. Now, if you excuse me, I've got a test to go take. See ya. Okay, let me try that again. Shit. What the fuck? Fuck. Is that a door? Okay. Ah, door. What the fuck? Better move this basket out of the way. Ah, shit. There's a bunch of trash on the floor. God damn it. Why are all these socks down here?